Well, good day, everybody. Steve, the amateur historian, walking down. I believe I'm on Harvey Milk, trying to get to 4th and Alder without getting mowed down. Because I got a fresh one here for you, just like these 2 cans of Coke that someone left behind. I'm heading to 4th and Alder, specifically. It would be the northeast corner of 2nd and Alder, where the St. Paul Hotel once stood. That on a new episode of Historic Murders of Portland. We've arrived at 4th and Alder, and like so many things, the place that was once here, this is the northeast corner, has been replaced by a parking garage. What else is new? There's a nice colorful door. And there's a lot of homeless people sitting around the corner there, so this looks a little more welcoming for today's story. So it is May 11th, 1929, when the events that transpired in the story take place. By this time, a young married couple, Charles and Bertine Paullin, which Bertine, I've never heard that name before. I always love it when I hear new names for the first time. I never got how old they are, but based on the circumstances of their marriage, I'm guessing they were pretty young. By Bertine's account, they had eloped together, which already has kind of a youthful connotation to it. Someone in the family didn't like it. Someone said, "You're too young to get married," and they said, "Screw you, we'll have our happiness." So they eloped together, and it's another in this long line of young Portland marriage tragedies where 2 people get together, and usually it's the guy. He either is a petty criminal or he drinks too much or, whatever circumstances. And, he meets a woman that really wants to help him become a better man. But he just isn't up to the challenge. And so they have this very secretive marriage. I don't even think by 1929 their families maybe even knew for certain. I mean, they both disappeared at about the same time when they ran off together, so I would think probably the families knew, but pretty quickly the whole thing kind of just started coming apart because Charles, Bertine made it clear she wanted to help him become a better person, and it appears Charles was not up to the challenge. So, this marriage goes on about as long as Bertine can handle it, and finally the 2 separate. So even though, here's another classic example of the young married man in earlier days of Portland, he can't be bothered to make a good life for him and his wife. He can't be bothered to become a better person, to follow at least some of the circumstances that his wife is putting forth to help them have a better life together. But the moment they split and she takes off, it's not even necessarily that she's seeing someone else or anything. He immediately, can't deal with that. "You're my wife. Oh my God, you're never gonna. I'm your husband. I'm your one and only." And it's like, well, where was that love and dedication when you guys were together? And it's not love. It's possession. It's men not being able to handle the fact that this wife, this was his wife, and now she's gone. And it's like, no. You can't just leave me. You're mine. Just whacked. And that's, a prevailing attitude in some men today. And it was probably even more of a prevailing attitude back in the day. So during this period of separation, Bertine ends up meeting a young 25-year-old grocery store clerk, a guy named Harry Nichols. And the two kind of hit it off. They're not madly in love. They haven't fallen head over heels. But, you know, it seems like, calm down, nobody died. You know, it seems like Charles Paullin was someone she wanted to make better, and he ended up just being a deadbeat. So Bertine, after having this marriage with this guy that wasn't really great and didn't really go anywhere, pretty much almost any other guy that's the next guy she meets is probably going to be a lot more interesting and a lot more charming and a lot more appealing to her, because she kind of had nowhere to go but up. So she meets this guy, Nichols. She hasn't divorced Charles, so this is they kind of are secretly starting to see each other and maybe see where it goes. So that brings us to the evening of May 11th, 1929, here at the one-time St. Paul Hotel. Harry Nichols had gotten a room here, and Bertine had gone up to see him. And it seems by this time, whether he was following them or it was just by chance, but Charles Paullin, it seems pretty clear at this point, has figured out that his wife is cavorting, canoodling with another man. And he's not going to have any of it. And it's obvious that this is a premeditated situation. It was so premeditated that Charles Paullin got his own brother, who was a cab driver, so he actually worked a job where he drove. He actually got his brother to be essentially his wheelman in all this. He brought Paullin to the St. Paul Hotel, where he had presumably seen his wife, his separated from wife, go in and go up and hang out with this Harry Nichols guy. He proceeds to get out of the car, goes upstairs, and Bertine says she wasn't in Nichols' hotel room more than 5 minutes before Charles Paullin burst through the door and quickly pulled a revolver out and opened fire on Nichols for, you know, trying to steal his separated wife. You know, I don't know how many stories high the hotel was, but it would have been right here. I get the vibe it was one of those, like, you know, like 3 or 4 story buildings that probably had like storefronts at the base. That's the vibe I get in this area. And yeah, he shot Nichols right in the middle of the forehead. The bullet probably went through his brain. Nichols dropped dead almost immediately. And without a second's thought, Paullin fled the room, didn't try to, I guess, rekindle the situation with his wife, say, I'm sorry, I'm going to be a better man now, even though I may be going to prison, or, you know, going to the executioner's chair. He just split. And he ran back downstairs because his brother was waiting in a cab to take him away. So his brother actually ended up getting held as an accessory in this whole thing. So it's abundantly clear that there was clear, absolute premeditation in all of this. Like, there was no question about it. Like, this was planned all the way down to having his own brother as a getaway man. And he ultimately, talking about Charles Paullin, he ultimately fled to his home where his mother lived, Mama's boy, and she actually was instrumental in getting him to give himself up to the police, and that's how he was apprehended. And I just did a full circle because people keep lingering around me. But yeah, again, here's where the St. Paul Hotel would have been, right behind me, here at 4th and Alder. So again, as I was saying, this was clearly premeditated. But there was one thing that Charles Paullin had on his side, and that was the fact that the man he'd shot had been fooling around with his wife. Now that said, they were separated at the time. You know, and sometimes a separation type situation leads to you making new discoveries in your life and pursuing someone new. That has happened, that does happen. So I wouldn't exactly say this was cheating, and we don't really know how far romantically Bertine Paullin and Nichols had gone. So it's kind of unfair to say that, oh, well, they just all out cheated. But I think that was the attitude when Paullin went on trial, was that, you know, this guy was moving in on his wife, who again separated. And we don't know how far things went between the two of them, but this was 1929. We're kind of past the age of the unwritten law where, you know, a man could murder his wife's lover and pretty much get away with it without even going to prison. In this case, it's 1929. It's a little further on down the road. That whole concept is beginning to fade rapidly. So Charles Paullin still gets what I would call a slap on the wrist, but at least he got charged, and he actually did prison time. But he was charged with manslaughter and given a 5-year sentence for cold-blooded, premeditated murder. So I think they still kind of gave the guy a break, considering the circumstances, even though he was an utter deadbeat who didn't treat his wife well, and now his wife was finally finding a guy that was treating her well. Who was really the bad guy in this dynamic? I think it was the husband, as far as I'm concerned. So the guy didn't, all in all, get away with it, but I think considering the circumstances, you give someone a 5-year sentence for that, you got away with something. You don't walk away from something like that nowadays with 5 years in prison. The whole universe would be out to get you if you let someone off for doing that with such a simple slap on the wrist. 5 years for murder, that is a bona fide example of slap on the wrist. So, you know, the guy got lucky. The jury sympathized with him and his circumstances, even though Charles Paullin was apparently just kind of a loser at life, and kind of created a situation that pretty much drove his wife to want to leave him, potentially. So I certainly wouldn't have given the guy a break like that, but that is what happened in this case of the murder of a grocery store clerk who thought he met someone new that he could like, maybe someday love and appreciate, and it ended up leading to a bullet right through his head, unfortunately. Wow, that was real fucking mature. I don't know if you heard that, but I'm not going to repeat what that guy just said. Anyway, so that's it. That's really it for this particular story. And now I'm all thrown off because of what that guy just said driving by. But that is the story for today, and I'm gonna get this video ended because I feel like there's so much traffic around me. I'm gonna end up getting hit if I don't. So anyway, thank you so much for stopping by and watching today's episode. Remember, as always, to like, share, subscribe, hit up my Patreon. I'm trying to post there at least twice a day for you. Lots of extra content you can only get if you join up with my Patreon today. The link to that is in the description with this video, as well as the links to my Instagram, Facebook, Reddit subreddit, and TikTok. So all that said, till next time, this has been Steve the Amateur Historian with another episode of Historic Murders of Portland.